Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Chancellor. I'll wait for you to finish writing your notes. I know you got a lot of things to catch up on. I wanted to ask you two questions. They talked about mayoral control already. I just want to say that I hope that we can, the main issue that I hear about mayoral control is the ability of parents to impact the system and to speak on different issues. And I hope that we can add some additional component of that to mayoral control so that we can get enough, so we can put that to bed. I think that mayoral control is an important component, and doing it in more than 1 year is also important also. I don't know about doing it for 7 years, extending it beyond the term of the mayor, but I think the major issue is that parents want to have an ability to have real comments on issues and policies and at every level of the system. And if they can have a period of comment or a rotating parent on the PEP panels and also on the CE, on the community education panels, where they can have a period of comment and feedback would be, I think, a big help to parents around the system. And also, not just at PTA meetings, but having an opportunity to go into the local schools and to participate in a real level is something the parents are still asking about. I know that we have the parent coordinators that are trying to put things together, but especially parents that have limited time and access want to be able to have their own opportunities to come in, not necessarily within those limited windows that they're being offered now. And I think that we can find other ways to create opportunities to allow more parents to have access to policy issues and understanding those issues and articulating their concerns about those specific issues as well.
Well, let me tell you three things that we have done differently in the last year and a half. Number one, we have given the CECs a little bit more freedom and responsibilities in terms of certain issues. Certainly, rezoning, bringing issues to the table is at the CECs. And how these CEC elections take place has incorporated more parent voice. I now meet with all the CEC presidents on Saturdays. That was something I did because when we were meeting at night, not everyone could make it, or people were rushed, or there was all kinds of issues. So we meet once a month on Saturdays for anywhere from 2 hours or more if it takes place. We now have subcommittees of the CECs. So one of the subcommittees is on enrollment, because a lot of parents around the city have very strong opinions on enrollment, particularly middle school enrollment. So we have committees that are now working on issues that seem to be somewhat more systemic than just an individual district. The other thing is I've asked all schools to hold more open houses. Tours of the building, we now have 4 days a year compared to 2 that we've had in the past for open school, open houses, but we want parents not just to go to see a middle school when they're looking at the middle school, but if you have a 3rd grader, you want to see what 4th grade may look like. So we're pushing for more open houses for particularly middle schools, but across the city, so that principals have a more welcoming approach to what your school has to do. I just spoke to a group of principals about having their pre-K parents come visit the kindergartens in the same building so they can see what the kids are going to be going to. But your 2nd grade parents might want to see what 3rd grade is all about. So we are trying to open schools better, but it also has to be done, so that we don't disrupt education. That the principal can still do their job and the teachers can still do their jobs, but I do believe that's important. And the other thing we've done, which I didn't even know hadn't been done, when we have CEC meetings, we ask parents to ask questions publicly, but also we give them cards on which they can write questions privately. And every single parent that addresses us with a question gets an answer. And they generally get it within 2 weeks. And it can be specific to their school. It could be something they think we should do universally. So parent voice is very, very important to me. We do a lot of parent conferences. We've encouraged parent organizations to come talk to us about different issues. So, but anyone who has more specific suggestions on more things we could do with parents, I'm happy to take them under advisement.
I'll be happy to send you the specifics. I want to applaud you for making all the CEC meetings that you've made and having public meetings in the evening. I attended the one you had at 238 with District 29. The auditorium was full, and it was a great discourse back and forth. And I think those types of things really empower parents, and they feel involved in making that. And I'm impressed that you've been doing that all over the city and continuing to do that, to have direct contact. You talked about parity, and I wanted to talk about the rezoning and the distribution of children within school districts, especially when we have some schools that are overcrowded from children and schools that are undercrowded, and how can we start looking at making those changes within the school year so that we don't have schools that are undercrowded when we have children overcrowded, especially in parts of 29 and 28. We have some schools that really need to get some relief, and while we have other vacant space in schools, just to keep it parochial for a minute, but I understand that's a citywide issue as well. How can we create opportunities to change those numbers so that these schools can have a balanced and workable number of children?
Well, I think here again, the parent wishes have to be listened to, and this is the one issue that it goes through the CEC. But we will also send people from Elizabeth Rose to Rita Gibson. These are deputy chancellors and also Josh Wallach that all have to work together, because it's about how are you changing your enrollment patterns. What is the real, we have a person who's an expert on facilities, does nothing but looks and sees what the school capacity is or what it could be. So those are all things that we're looking at. But the other thing is, parents get very attached to their neighborhood school. So also convincing parents that they're going to go to a different school than what they traditionally have gone to, it's about assuring them that the other school is as good as the school they're at. And that really, to me, is my mission. And I wouldn't recommend doing any kind of, unless I could honestly say in my deepest heart, guys, either school, your child's going to get education. And that's certainly something I could say without being at all hesitant in the rezoning at 308 and PS8. I know both principals, I know both student bodies, I've been to both schools numerous times, and I can say to parents, guys, this is really a good thing. Mm-hmm. So I do think it's a situation by situation, no blanket statements on this, but this is something, and many parents now in CECs are saying to me, have you thought about, would you do this? I'm anxious for parents to tell me first before we have to go out to the public. So certainly encourage your constituencies to look at some of the issues, and then what do we do from there?
Right.
So.
Okay, great. Well, also I support the CTC program. Hillcrest High School I share with Assemblyman Weprin, and the nursing program there is a great program, and I hope that we can get the proper people to continue that program and a proper teacher to come in. Maybe you could work with York College, which has nursing programs also, Queensborough to borrow faculty to continue that program and maybe do that on a citywide basis. I think that would be critical.
I'm going to use this opportunity today to send you a letter by next week.
Okay.
Because, this is like we have to strike with the iron is hot. I don't know if you heard yesterday, there was a national report on what the careers in the future are. And the top 10 careers or 20 careers are all health-related. They all have to do with geriatric care as well as health-related. And that means that we really need to put those programs in our schools, because a lot of our kids will have jobs, and this is what they're training us. So those CTE programs are going to be crucial to making sure that we're moving forward on this.
Right. And finally, Chancellor, we don't have a community school in District 29 anywhere, which is one of the longest commute times in the city. We really need to find 4 locations, hopefully, in 29 and 28, they don't have a community school.
Because you have no renewal schools. So that was our first option, to put community schools where you have renewal schools. But as we move forward, when more money becomes available, there are several schools I actually visited in 29, one of which would be a good candidate, but it's really prioritizing the community schools in our struggling schools.
Oh, okay, well, I'm glad that we don't have renewal schools, but we have parents with some of the longest commute times in the city, and having a school that's open. I would hope that every school in the system could be open until 7 o'clock, as I told the state commissioner, and I hope that we can work to that model as well, especially with working parents. Many of my parents have to leave their homes before 7 a.m. They're not getting back with the long commute time till 7 p.m. So the more that we can set those up.
Well, keep in mind that last year, we put after-school programs at every single middle school in New York City.
Right.
And our thinking on that one was that who are the kids that are most likely to need to be in a safe place? And we decided it was teenagers, that adolescents have the most need to be actively occupied. And by the way, our after-school programs, different than community schools, are focused on things like the arts and chess and some academics, but a variety. Sports and arts does a lot of those works for us. And those are after-school providers, expanded time providers. And we did it at all middle schools. So now the elementary school parents are saying, what about us? Many of them, if they're Title I schools, have used some of their Title I funding for after-school programs. The people who are really kind of out there are the ones who are not Title I schools, where parents have either fundraised for this. But, you know, the principals are asking this as our parents, but it's a matter of when you have limited funds, where do you prioritize? But it isn't that we haven't thought about which are the neighborhoods that we need to do more in terms of after-school.
Thank you. I want to just compliment you and your staff. You've always been responsive and detailed, and even when you haven't given me the response I wanted to hear, it's been a response that we needed to hear. So I want to thank you for being diligent and getting back to us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. Assemblywoman Maliatakis.
Thank you, Chancellor. I just wanted to, well, first echo some of the sentiments of my colleague, Senator Savino, regarding the $868 million on the 5-year capital plan. There are schools in my district, as I'm sure most representatives here, that are at least 100% or 150% over capacity. She had mentioned PS 13 on Staten Island. We've been talking to our local council member about that. We'd really like to maybe have a meeting with you regarding that particular school. Being with new developments in the mayor's affordable housing plan and the Mount Manresa development, we have significant concerns. Also, parochial school closures in that area have led to an overpopulation in that school. In the Brooklyn part of my district, there are two in particular, PS 176 and PS 127. The belief is that it's been the problem of illegal conversions in Bay Ridge, Dyker Heights area that have led to overcrowding at those schools. So certainly if we're going to be adding seats, if you could take a look at those as well. I wanted to ask you a little bit about some of the out-of-pocket expenses that teachers may be having in the schools. It just always seems interesting, I guess, to me that, you know, the state spends $9.5 billion this year for the city of New York, and it's gone up significantly over the last few years. We spent about $19,000 per pupil. Yet we always see the teachers don't have paper, they don't have basic supplies that they need to perform their duties. And so I'm very happy to see that the governor's put in a $200 tax credit for the teachers in this year's budget. I wish it would be $500, which is a bill that I and a couple of my colleagues have that would give it a $500 tax credit. But I just wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, first of all, good teachers always spend money out of pocket. I mean, I was a teacher for 22 years, and if I wanted to give the students a party, it came out of pocket. I wanted to buy something for the classroom that maybe was a little unusual or different, and in my case, always unusual or different, came out of pocket. It was part of the expenses at the time of doing my job. My husband, who's an accountant, would say to me, well, that's tax deductible. And I would keep my receipts, and you would have said the same thing. Sure. And I had a very large envelope of tax deductible. The same thing when I was a principal. Would buy books for my teachers on my own. Would buy things for the school on my own. I think that's part of it. I do think having a tax credit would help. But I do think that if you want to do a job, there are always things you want to do that are different classroom to classroom. One teacher may want to do baking. I used to cook with my students one year every single Friday. There was no way that money was coming out of any school budget. There's nothing there for that kind of consumable, but I wasn't going to stop. I decided this year, I was teaching American history, that I had this book, The Cookbook of Presidents, and I would cook the menus that different presidents considered their favorite. Until I hit one president who liked lobster, and I stopped right there because I didn't have enough money to do that. But I do think you're always going to have that. I think whatever career you have, you're going to spend some extra money. I think certainly, you know, we have Teachers' Choice, donors.org, which have been very helpful to a lot of our schools. But there's no easy answer to this in terms of, but I think the tax credit will go a long way to helping
Okay,
them.
great. In last year, 2015-16, New York City received $531 million in contracts for excellence funding. Of that, only 7.5 million went to Staten Island Public Schools, representing only about 1.42% of the funding. Staten Island Public Schools serve over 70,000 students, as you know, which represents about 6.2% of all New York City students. So if you were to do this proportionally, Staten Island should get about 31 million. So I just wanted to know how you make this determination.
Sure, the C4E money that you're referencing, there are state regulations promulgated on how the money gets distributed, and it's determined based on need, essentially. And so we look across the entire city at the neediest schools. And although there are needy schools in all boroughs, it seems that as the money gets distributed, Staten Island schools are comparatively less needy. That's not to say that they're not needy, please. Yes.
I still do believe, though, it should be more proportional based on population. I mean, we have this fight all the time with HHC, right? We want our fair share of hospital funding. We don't even have a public hospital, but we would say, well, give us our proportional share on population for those hospitals that we do have. So I think this is sort of a similar case, which we could talk at another time about.
Happy to. Happy to talk about it.
Thank you for answering.
And just so you know, and many of you are already taking advantage of it, any of you who want to have one-on-one conversations with any member of my staff or myself, I'm happy to do it.
Thank you.
And you deal with our InterGov team, and then just give us a heads up on some of the issues so we can research them before we meet.
Thank you. I have two more questions. I saw an article in the New York Times, I guess it was a few months ago, about the first day of school. You visited a school, PS 212 in Queens. They have a Move to Improve program.
The Move, oh yes.
The Move to Improve program. And included in that program is mindfulness programming, which I happen to truly believe in. I believe that this, mindfulness, meditation, quiet time, whatever you want to call it, I believe it is really a tool to help children focus, help their concentration, especially children with attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity, children with autism. So I just would love to hear about what your thoughts are on this program and how do we get one in my district?
Well, this was a program, in fact, we had gone there for a totally different purpose. They were starting a dual language program, if I believe, and that's why we were there. The principal told me it was done as a result of teachers saying that life was too pressured and too rushed. So the teachers went for training, and really it's a very simple thing. It's really more about taking a deep breath and learning how to let out. I mean, I actually sat with the kids and did it, so I know it does work at that little level. But we made that a showcase school, which are schools that we think are doing something excellent, so other schools can go there and observe it and see if they can replicate it. The only thing that holds us back from doing that is the willingness of teachers to be trained in it. In this particular school, I think the principal had a guidance counselor that was trained in it, and she trained others. So it's certainly an encouragement, and principals can request it in terms of they want more training in it, but it ties in with all the things that we're doing in terms of mental health and wellness as in general.
How many schools in the city do that?
I don't know right now, but I can find out.
Okay, great. And I'd
That's
love to
the
come
one.
visit one with you if you would like to take me.
Now, that principal speaks very highly of it.
Great. I just got one last question. I read a report about this new policy on student behavior, about school discipline. And there was an article, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that said in October, they started giving out these cards now. They're warning cards instead of suspension. But there was one student who, in October, was, instead of, he was carrying 7 bags of marijuana. How does somebody like that get just a warning card? This is for high school students, too, and the warning card says you're supposed to take the card home and discuss it with your parents. I mean, this is not really realistic that we're going to expect a child, a student, a high school student specifically, to go home and discuss this type of stuff with their parents. I think it's in terms of, we don't want to suspend kids, right? If there were other circumstances in there, dressing inappropriately, cursing, whatever it was, I can understand that. But 7 bags of marijuana, to send them a card instead of sending them for suspension, I think is really not the right move. I just wanted to know what your thoughts are on this and the reason they changed the policy.
We have had a committee working on this for the last year almost, and I think we're trying to balance what is really behavior that needs to be constantly reprimanded or somehow penalized, and that we just part of normal behavior. So obviously, that's something I'd have to look at. I don't know that case specifically. But one of the things that I'm very clear about is I started looking at kids who were suspended and how many, and some from more schools than others, and it was a big inconsistency. So in this school, you got suspended for X, but in this school, no. So we need to bring more of a systemic approach to suspensions. We also know that with suspensions, students who are suspended for too long tend not to go back to school at all. So would you rather have them in school learning and on a career path, or do you want them to make sure that they're the first natural dropouts? So this is something that we've spent more time, and we haven't really finalized it because we have to bring NYPD, principals' opinions, but we have a committee that's working on this. The stickiest point is the suspension around an issue called insubordination. And that means, what do we mean by it? What I consider insubordination, someone else might. So we're trying to codify what are some of the issues and what is the appropriate penalty for those issues. So in one school, it doesn't become 10 days, in another school, 20 days. So this is really something that we're working with. We do not have an answer as of right now, but it's part of the process of also making sure that some schools, and particularly in certain neighborhoods, don't over-suspend versus other schools that under-suspend. So this is a puzzle, a problem, but it's still in the works.
Okay, and I do think that it needs to be re-examined as we go forward, because we don't want what you said, which is insubordination. We don't want children or students to think that they can get away with disrespecting their teachers, their
Absolutely.
colleagues, or their principals.
Also, everybody has a right to feel safe in a school, not just students, but teachers and principals as well. That is what we guarantee, that if you send your child to school, they're going to be safe. So I take that very seriously.
Okay, thank you. I've run out of time, so I will end there. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Senator Belmonette Montgomery.
Good afternoon, Chancellor. I can't help but make a note of something that I hope my male colleagues will not feel offended, but it is certainly a wonderful thing in our history, in the history of our state, to see a perfect alignment in our educational system with women at the head of every system. So, thank you. I appreciate you acknowledging. So, you're there, our chancellor.
It's about time.
It's about time. Our commissioner was here this morning. Our SUNY chancellor is a female. The regents, outgoing regents chancellor is female. NYSET head is female. So we're in good hands and good stead. So I thank you, and I'm happy that you're here. As a seasoned educator, I can really feel it. It's very different. I would just like to, appreciate also that you have referred to school-based health clinics in your report, and I am so happy that you acknowledge that, and it's been a long time. We have not really advanced to my satisfaction enough, but you're acknowledging it, you're working on it, and it's going to be part of the building of the community schools that I think is so important. I just want to say to you that you also mentioned the different programs that you have instituted along the lines of college readiness initiatives. And certainly that's something that we all applaud you for. I want to just mention, I'm not sure that this was highlighted, but we've talked about it. I know that you have. I know that you're interested, and the commissioner this morning indicated that she certainly agrees with you and is going to be working with you on it. Developing the middle school as part of the pipeline to college. We seem to not have put enough emphasis on that, and that's really where we need the most help. And so I really am looking forward to us being able to talk a lot more about that as we have in the past.
My first 6 months on this job, I did nothing but middle schools. I am a firm believer that middle schools are the crux of our system. If you look at the system, that elementary schools, now with pre-K, we have those in a pretty good shape.
Yes.
You know, some need more help than others, but honestly, middle schools have several issues, 7th grade in particular. You have students going through social, emotional issues. You have them deciding that they don't even know if they want to be in school, number one, but also they don't like themselves. So teachers have to be of a different, attitude. You have teachers going for teaching licenses. They know they want to be a high school teacher because they want to teach a subject, and they know they want to be in elementary school. No one says, I want to be a middle school teacher. Somehow you end up there. So I do think it's really important to focus, and because I did so much work with middle schools those first 6 months, I found some extraordinary examples of fabulous middle schools. So if you look at our learning partners and showcase, vast majorities of middle schools, because there is the right way to run a middle school and the wrong way. So I do believe that middle schools that offer arts programs, middle schools that offer choices for students, and particularly choices around their making decisions for themselves, middle schools that are of a certain size and run by houses so that you have the same guidance counselor for 3 years, you have the same assistant principal 3 years. These are better models than some other models. So I do believe that we're getting better at middle school, but also 8th grade teachers must start talking to 9th grade teachers the same way that 5th grade teachers need to start talking to 6th grade teachers. So because we're now back in superintendencies, the other structure, the middle schools and high schools and elementary were not geographically together. You had a superintendent of this school, and right across the street another superintendent, and these principals didn't even know each other's names. So our thought was, under the superintendencies that are geographically based, like districts, that every middle school would know all their feeder elementary schools. And because they're all under one superintendent, they meet at least once a month and talk to each other. That, to me, is a crucial point in terms of getting that working. We've also asked high schools now, who tended to have their own little islands, to kind of start adopting middle schools that they will work with. For example, I went to, Dominic D'Angelo's school. He has a phenomenal orchestra, symphony orchestra, 100 and some odd players. So I said to him, are you working with any high school so that your kids, when they leave your program, can automatically go? And I think he was working with Fort Hamilton, but he also has now 2 elementary schools where his teachers go to work with them, so they will have a path. So yes, we need a pre-K to 12 path, and we need these people to know each other and to talk to each other, but also to have programs that will become consistent. I mean, one of the other things that I think eventually would help in changing of the laws, and I've already discussed this with Mary Ellen, there's a ruling that says in middle school you have to offer 3 different art forms. I would love for us some flexibility and say that if you have one art form that is fabulous, can we do the same one over 3 years? Isn't it better to be really, really good at something than have a little bit of this, a little bit of that? So there's a lot of things that I think can be done to make middle schools even better than the great ones really are right now.
Thank you for that. And speaking of alignment, there's another area that I think the Commissioner is certainly aligned with you. You mentioned in your statement that one of the principles of success under your leadership is that you want to see more sharing of best practices. And that, in fact, is one of the pieces, the tenets of that the Commissioner gave us today. And that is a part of the section of their budget proposal that deals specifically with improving the outcomes for boys and young men of color. But I think it's a principle that we can probably use throughout our system. And that is, they have requested a specific funding for developing exemplary school models and sharing those practices. So hopefully you will be able to, and we will be able to benefit from that for the fact that you're trying to do this. You should be able to access some of those funds. So we'll be working together, make sure that happens, because that's what we need. There are some really wonderful models, and one of them, as you know, I've spoken to you so many times about, is the Harbor School, which is one of those just absolute jewels in your system, in our system. And we need more of those. We need a lot more CTE programs that work to actually prepare young people to go into the world and be more successful in many different areas. So I thank you for your
To me,
attention.
collaboration is much better than competition. Competition, you care about yourself. Collaboration, you have to be, your success should only happen if you bring someone else along to success. So in our models, we have what we call master principals, master assistant principals, and teacher leaders, which get extra money, not because their test scores are higher, but because they've opened their doors and shared what they've already learned with a lot of other people. So this spirit of collaboration works for all kids, and to me, that's the model I want to see.
Yes, and personally and, otherwise, I worry a lot about the fact that children with the most needs are treated experimentally far too often, and what really works is never replicated widely, doesn't get factored into becoming part of the system and the way that we work with young people. So I'm just happy to see that both you and the Commissioner are looking at ways to look for the best practices and begin to utilize them more widely. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Felix. Mr. Felix Ortiz.
I'm corrected. I stand corrected, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you,
Yes.
Thank you, Mr.
Afternoon.